was like, you could do that? Like, that's allowed? It's like this barrage of kick drums, lasers, but it had swagger. You know, it hit you here, like in the core, in the gut. It was just like inevitable for this block to be a thing.
Greetings from the Electric Byway.
Hello Seekers and welcome back to the channel. This time we have Death Qualia from the US here as a guest, and he has been spending some years living in Berlin, and now he's back in the US, and we are gonna be talking about the underground scenes specifically in Berlin and the US, and specifically this underground scene, what you call the Flashblock. I've been kind of avoiding to talk about Berlin because it's most of the videos on this channel are more about like less known locations and underground scenes, but Berlin is like this place where people from around the world, they come and make these big underground scenes happen there. But I also have many good memories from Berlin, and I've been there many times, and I think it's time to talk about it. So welcome, and thanks for joining channel.
Thanks, Tomas. Thanks for having me. It's definitely a pleasure and an honor to be one of the people or the person you pick from Berlin. I definitely empathize with the notion of spending even more energy focusing on Berlin. Mm-hmm. So we'll try to make it interesting.
Yeah.
You know, it's a beacon. It's a place where you and I have both been, and it's a place where people from around the world go. So hopefully we'll talk about that.
Yeah. So tell us a bit about your own background. How did you first hear electronic music and the more underground stuff, and like how did you get involved in it?
I think my initiation into electronic music was 13, 14 years old, which in Europe is like 10 years old. That's young for us in the US. Mm-hmm. In the Netherlands, that's like 6 years old. I was deeply into hardcore and metal. I would go to a lot of shows. I had a distro, which I'll plug, Burn to a Crisp Records. Reach out if you want any golden era 2000, 2001 hardcore, punk, some metal records, crust, thrash. And I was just sort of a music nerd. And a friend of mine played me a Tobin Foley Room. No, Out From Outwhere on mushrooms. I remember specifically I hadn't noticed he turned something on. It was just music in the background, and then Rhino Jockey came on. Mm-hmm. And that kind of changed my life. Of course, there's always just a sequence of life-changing moments when you get into new music, new artists. But that was definitely like a memorable pivot. From there, he handed me some like Ninja Tune stuff. Mm-hmm. Then I did the typical, like, got into jungle, like radio stations, and yeah, all the usuals, Tortoise and Cloud Dead and Square Pusher and Y, a lot of like artsy contemporary stuff. And from there, I became, I think, first a drum and bass head, if not first, then close second. And I became a really big drum and bass tech step head. Like a lot of people pretty much couldn't go darker and faster and harder enough, getting into like skullstep and stuff, and whatever was the most, that skullstep compilation was just like the next thing to itch the scratch, or scratch the itch. After being into drum and bass for a while, and I went to the drum and bass weekly in Boston. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely at least the beginning of my electronic music background, how I got into it. I could go on.
So around what time was that when you were visiting these parties in Boston?
So I got into electronic music in 2005, and then 2008, 2009, there was a great drum and bass scene in Boston where I was going to school. which is definitely an oasis. Boston's not a great place to be for this kind of music, but also, I mean, I that's when I first started my own event.
So you were starting to do some parties in Boston, or did you first start to DJ or make music, or how did that go?
Yeah, good question. I think like most kids, I was messing around in Ableton 4, and I mean MPC. I got an MPC 1000. Pulled in like every aunt and uncle and parent to get that kind of things. You know, that was my gaming console. So I was making beats on the MPC for a while through high school. And then finally got like Ableton Live Lite through one of those whatever. And was doing that for a while. I think I was doing remix stuff. That was big. The US was a weird scene. We had like blog electro coming around and mashup and like all these cringe genres, you know, that gotta respect. And I got to Boston, and Freak Energy, actually. freakenergy.ru was a Russian pirate site that had everything. And a Russian friend showed me it. And that's like how I kind of accelerated learning a ton of music, producing more. So when I got to Boston, I couldn't really find anyone who was into music like as dark and hard and intense, you know, kind of didn't realize I was into industrial music yet. I was listening to a lot of combat recordings, and Electronic Explorations was like super pivotal. That the podcast by Rob Booth, who now runs Houndstooth, and Mantis Radio. They were pushing this stuff that like you could probably find in London, but in Boston, you know, there was house music, there was a drum and bass night. But I wanted to do, heavier stuff. So that's why I started a series with two nerd friends in Boston, I think freshman year, sophomore year, 2000.
So there was already like skullstep kind of stuff being played, or were you like introducing it to people? Or?
It was being played in my head. No, in the US, I mean, I guess I should actually go back a bit. I was in LA for a year. I had to take some time off school. And I was in LA with my homie Clem, who I'll definitely mention again because he's my partner in DEFCE. And out there they had Droid Behavior, and they had So Fucking Simple, and they had Darkmatter. And that was just like a dream come true. So pardon, no, there was definitely no tech step or anything hard in Boston. But in LA, there was. There was just a lot. We went to these pure filth parties that would have like, I mean, there was a lot of dubstep. It was a big time of dubstep, but there was a lot of mutant breakcore stuff going on. I remember seeing a flyer for So Simple, DJ Rashad and Rais and Basek. And I was like, wow, like all of these artists are in the same place. I think we had just missed it or something. Like I saw the flyer in like a taqueria or in an ice cream shop. It's like, Jesus, like being in an ice cream shop and seeing a lineup like that was amazing. So I got to get close to it in LA, and just being with a homie who had the same taste in music as me was very special. That's not something you get a lot in the US. You're usually kind of in isolation, just surfing the web. So yeah, when I got to Boston, I tried to push it like kind of as hard and fast as I could, but I didn't really get that far. Like it's just people in Boston, they want to go out to like house music and just kind of like twirl their fingers or whatever.
Yeah. But yeah, at least like Darkmatter Soundsystem, I think that they are pretty known in the like underground core scene as well, like globally.
Yeah, they seemed like a monolith to us. We were younger, or like 19, and they just had all their stuff tight, like all their design and the music and like all the footage from their stuff. We were just like, wow, like LA in general is the sheer volume of LA, as anyone says, is just lends itself to so much like gooey, mossy scenes. I mean, you could go to a breakcore party and there'd be a few hundred people, or go to some really niche, weird electronic music. There'd be a few hundred people in a warehouse with like great lighting, fog, and if let's say there's 300 people at a party there, that's 300 times as many people that would be at a party anywhere else in the country. It's just its own thing out there.
Yeah, I've never been to the US, but I want to go one day and visit both the coasts and everything in between. What's interesting.
Yeah, save a lot of money and a lot of time, and not a lot of expectations.
So how did you get the idea to move to Berlin? How did you end up there?
Probably similar to a lot of people, or a lot of people in the West. I was pretty beat on spending all my time, energy, and money doing events in Boston and kind of settling for something I didn't even find that fun. They were okay, but it's just, I knew by then that in Berlin there was more. So I was kind of rewarding myself. I was like, okay, I've put in this much time and energy. I think I earned going out there and seeing what's up. And just I just want to blend in. I don't even want to, orchestrate or curate or lift a finger anymore. I want to be able to walk out my door and just walk into an ocean of blood and kick drums and dope beats. So Clem, who had mentioned, my partner in DEFCE, he had pilgrimaged to Berlin, 1 year, and he found this club Subland. I mean, he went for Subland, which is a club that was run by Dean Rodell, who's a machine code fame with Current Value, and Nicholas from Ad Nauseam. Nico did Burn the Machine Festival with Dean at Subland. Dean ran Subland with Oliver. So he came back and he was like, man, Berlin's awesome. So we went back out there together to play Burn the Machine. Dean was kind enough to book us for Burn the Machine. You had Panacea and Current Value, Dean Rodell, Igor, Stormfield, Subheim, Cause for Concern, Coup, lots of just a lot of classic tech step drum and bass favorites. I mean, it was a dream for us at the time. And to meet all those folk, Julian Munstrax was there, and it's a lot of people. It's 40 artists in 2 days. And I remember we got to Berlin, it was fall, all the leaves were yellow. We were in Friedrichshain, and all those buildings are yellow. I just remember coming around the corner to Subland, which is on Wiesenweg. It's on a very calm street, and it was so peaceful and so pretty. And then you just kind of turn a corner and you enter into an old World War II bunker. And I was like, wow, I mean, this is just, because in New York, where I'd spent a lot of time, and all the American cities, but especially New York, it's so exhausting just navigating. The air is kind of attacking you, everything. I mean, just the noise pollution and the cars and the whole bustle thing. And it's just for what? It's not even worth it. Everyone's just bustling for nothing. So it's just it's very confusing. You're trying to figure out what all the commotion's about and what all the high prices are about. So I was like, wow. I mean, many people, I'm sure. Yeah. I was like, wow. So that's how I got to Berlin. Yeah.
What year was that when you moved there?
2014. It's November. Burn the Machine was the 1st of November. Okay. 2014.
Okay, cool. What was your first impression at the parties, when compared to the US, the people or the music, or was it very, very different there or similar compared to maybe LA?
I guess it's night and day. People are nice, in both places. It's just a difference in taste.
Yeah.
I think it'll probably come out more through the interview. I didn't know about the free party scene at all. Never read Hacking Bay. any Taz, anything. Didn't know about Spiral Tribe. Didn't know about Technovols. Like when I arrived in Berlin, I didn't know about any of that. And I'm 23 or 4 by now, which is the time that most Europeans have run through all of that. They're over it. They want to get jobs and never be in a squad again. And I've just learned about it. So that'll come out, more in the interview, what that difference was like. But I don't know, more dreadlocks, more tattoos. I don't know. I was definitely like the square dork who just like, hey, you guys like hardcore? Like, cool. You guys like crossbreed? Wow, all of you? There's like 400 people here that listen to hardcore. We were excited, me and Clem. We were just, people weren't as excited. We definitely got like teased a bit for being so excited. People were a little like, for that, like, yeah, it's Berlin. Like, all right, well, I'm excited. That kind of was a theme throughout the years. Like, I generally shy away from interviews or talking about myself in general. It gets it's a little tired, or like, who cares? But I don't think a lot of people in Berlin realized how much I'd been involved in the scenes in the US. I mean, I probably did 30, 40 events before I even moved to Berlin. I don't think anyone in Berlin even knew that. They just thought I was an excited kid. So I kind of finally at that point where it's like, yeah, I get to talk a little. I have seen some stuff. So yeah, it's nice to come on and talk about this.
How did you find this more crazy stuff like Flashcore and the more experimental hardcore stuff? How did you get involved in that?
That's easy. And picks up right where we left off. Clem and I played Burn the Machine. We played the second day, second room, played just before Stormfield, Derek, and right after DEFCE, who's Monologue and Swarm Intelligence. Great slot, like 3 a.m. Great acts, both of them. It was a great time. Anyway, after the event, we received a message from this girl, Aura Blue, online saying she saw us play, she really liked it, and invited us to play her event called Enter the Permafrost, which is a Splatterkore party, was her crew. And Clem was back in the States, so we turned it down. We didn't want to play Divorced. We didn't want just me to play. But I went. Remember, Subland had a party that night. I went out to Subland and then went over to Area 61, which was this venue at Janowitzbrücke, one of the main train stations in Berlin. And you could pass the station anytime past 10 p.m., almost any night of the week. Could be a Tuesday, and you would hear through the walls like fast beats, and I was always just like, wow, like I am in Berlin. Actually, it exceeded my expectations. I knew I came in Berlin for like a lot of rhythmic noise and techno and stuff, but yeah. So we went to Area 61, and I guess I had just missed Fifth Era, who I didn't know at the time. I didn't know that he was Fifth Era. I didn't know that he doesn't play for many people, that Aura Blue is one of the few people he plays for. Aura Blue at the time also, her DJ name was Mindgrind or Zoe. Yeah. And at that moment, this dude came on, Billy S., or he came on as Apocalyptic Panzer Symphony. And he played something that was just like lasers, and it was crazy. Like I'd heard breakcore before, and drum and bass and hardcore, but breakcore can be kind of. I was never like really into breakcore. I've listened to like Zombie Flesh Eater, Ebola, Square Pusher, and Cardo Pusher and stuff. Kid 606, like kind of the usuals. Venetian Snares was big for me growing up, but I never like dove super in a breakcore. It's a little like too up here for me, and I liked to dance. I liked meditative music. I liked techno at the time. I was definitely super into techno and hard techno. So when I heard this, it was like, I was like, you could do that? Like, that's allowed? And it was just like this barrage of kick drums, but it had swagger. Like it had, it hit you here, like in the core, in the gut. It had, like, you could dance to it. Like it had flow. It was beautiful. And I was standing next to Zoe and I was like, what is that? Like, that's okay? And she was like, that's Billy S. He's playing this Flashcore. And that was definitely, like, I'll never forget that moment. And from that point, I wrote to Zoe and she sent me Splatterkore stuff. Splatterkore, became a big part of my life as we go on. But she sent me compilations. She sent me Cross-Dimensional Contamination, which I later find out was started by another human of Splatterkore, Chris Westby, who's now my bandmate. That had, HFK, BWK, Lafudra. Go check it out. We'll put it up on the screen. Like, it's a classic. And I just dug into the whole Splatterkore catalog. Yeah, I remember hearing going through HFK's catalog was life-changing. I can totally use that term, was life-changing.
I think I also saw Billy S. at the Fuckparade 2011. I had been exposed to Flashcore before we were playing it here in Finland, but that was my first visit to Berlin, actually. And then there was this small truck at the back of the Fuckparade, and they were playing some Flashcore there. And I think Billy S. was playing there, or at some after party maybe. But actually, I haven't heard about him like in the recent years so much. But yeah, I also remember him from those years around 2010s early. Yeah, that was pretty cool.
Yeah, really quick on Billy S. He started part of starting Necrologic, which is a big like hardcore doomcore crossbreed label, and he's also part of, I don't know, he's worth looking up. He was more into the hardcore stuff, so he would kind of like do this for the kids, his Flashcore sets. Just kind of like a personal thing for him. But yeah. But do you remember first finding like Flashcore? Like, do you remember how it came to you, to Finland?
Yeah, I think that it might have been the article that somebody wrote. Maybe it was like around 2009 or a bit earlier that I read the article. That's how I started to get look into it more. I don't remember exactly how I found it, but yeah, that's basically how I've found Flashcore. And
shout out Billy S.
Yeah. I've also been involved with Splatterkore, like we've been collaborating, like they've been to Finland and I've been to their parties since like 2010 when they did their European tour. They also came here. So that's how I know them. So how did things go from there after those first experiences?
I moved into Splattertower, which is Zoe's place on Flashblock in East Friedrichshain on the border of Lichtenberg, where Subland was, where Kili was. My friend from childhood lived there, and the big music studio building that was above Subland was now void and Kili. And I was on that block, and Trasholade 22 or 3 came along. The one that had like Gridbug, and it had Lafudra and Lepest playing together as Lapudra. And it had Schizophonic and a bunch of people. And I asked if I could play, and Chris Westby was like, you can play, but you have to play all original stuff. And so I had to whip up a bunch of original material to play on that main stage. And I was in over my head. I don't think I realized the amount of like mastery and sincerity and intensity that the people on the main stage were bringing. Because Berlin's full of a lot of good music, but there's a lot of like interesting music. Like you go out and you're like, oh, this is good, right? Like this is good. This is good. You have to kind of think about it, which is not why I'm into music and rave. I'm like, if I want that, I'll go to a movie and be like, this is good, right? What did we think of that? Music, I just want, you should be able to enjoy a rave or dance music if your head was chopped off. Like there shouldn't be like a brainstem between you. You should know immediately, physically, without knowledge and without judgment, if you enjoy it. So yeah, I quickly just sunk all into this music. What was the question?
So how did it kind of go from there? So after the first experience, then was the Trasholade and Splattertower, and
after La Poudre and Gridbug played and Serial Arthropod kind of closed the night, like I just nothing could really compare. I was all in, so I wanted to be involved with those events as possible and make that music. I mean, I was already making it a bit, but then I really knew that it was just this it was like a weather system that they had created, that if you went out to techno or club music or avant-garde or Berliner tonal, it's just like, yeah, it's good. Granted, there was some really good stuff out there. I mean, I'm in Berlin. It was fantastic, but it just was a different system. So yeah, that was sort of the beginning of Flashblock. Well, of us calling it Flashblock.
So is that also kind of like a physical place for you, or it's more like the scene and the sound and the different artists?
So yeah, Flashblock composed of Splatterkore, Splattertower, on the corner of Goethestrasse. You go east a few hundred meters down to Kili Qlub, which is attached to Void, which is attached to the music studios. Kili, you'd have a lot of sidecore and psytrance, and where we would do trash and core, where we did Trasholade, where Mark a Critter did Subland. So a Critter, local hero, took the Subland brand. Dean blessed him with it, Dean Rodell, and he carried on. He tried a few spots in town, but eventually settled on doing the Subland parties at Kili. So those were continuing on with great drum and bass and crossbreed and hardcore and dubstep, even, what have you, breakcore. Those are fantastic. And Void, likewise, they had Step Higher, where they had psytrance in one room and drum and bass in another. Had hardcore, drum and bass any night of the week. Clem and I did 6 Gabber Noirs there, his label, which was, speedcore, terrorcore, hardcore, and stuff. We did our So Fucking Futures there. We did a Splatterkore there. On Wednesday night was Pet Duo Trans Night. Like a Wednesday night trans night. As if it was like the local jazz night. Maybe around here where I'm in Philly, you go out to the bar Tuesday, someone's doing like Sarah McLachlan covers. Blues night, but trans just regularly on a Wednesday, like whatever. I could close my window on a Wednesday night and I would just hear on any given evening, I could hear just the pummeling, just a faint ambiance of pummeling, rolling kick drums, and even with the window closed, it would like brush up against the building and kind of let you know that you're safe in the core womb among the core lords. Now it wasn't for everyone probably to be in that neighborhood, but it was very, very comforting and serene for me. And then you go down the block and you have the Praxis store next to Oskreutz Park. And the Praxis store eventually moved even closer to downtown Flashblock to the music studios, and became Disconnect. And that was, Christoph Ringeli with Praxis and Yaya 23 and Simon Korfunkel with his art there. And what a destination. And it was right there, just a few hundred meters away from Kili and Void, and Flashtower, which is so the music studios were attached to the clubs. And you had, Timon was there from Industrial Strength, Masters of Hardcore, and Ed Duran. If you want stories about Flashblock before it was called Flashblock, Ed is the guy. He's been there for ages, since, Kili was a theater. And I think, Christoph, not Ringeli, but Christoph, the landlord of the whole building, almost sold it over 10 years ago now, but he kept it. So, bless him for all of our differences, me and the landlord's differences. Bless him for holding on to that and letting it become what it is today. Ed's there. You had artists like Radad and Dasha Rush and Stanislav Glasov. And on my floor, you had the Dab Mastering Studio. You had Artifacts Mastering, Stroboscopic Artifacts Mastering. And then I shared the studio with Laurent Lepeste and this artist Unhuman, industrial goth artist.
Yeah, and wasn't also like the Void Club in that area?
Me and Clem worked at Void. Clem, my DeFace partner, stayed in the building when Subland closed, which was sad. And he didn't budge. So when Void opened, they opened the doors and Clem was standing there like, I come with the building. And so he was always nestled into Void. And we wanted to do events. So we did them at Void, and we did something that we'd done in New York and LA and in the US called So Fucking Future, which you I think played the first one.
Yeah, I played at the one in Void.
There might have been one before that. That one had Duran. It had Densha Crisis. It had Cicerda's Vigilia. It had Chris Play. It had... there's another one that had like Neurocore, Lepeste, Monster X, Broken Note. I kind of mixed the two up. That one had Schizophonic. Kid Corrupt was supposed to play. He couldn't make it from Liverpool. I mean, I was piggybacking on, what was before me. I would be at Zoe's and I would see all the Splatterkore flyers, like the one at Magdalena with HFK, Mr. Pork, yourself.
Yeah, that was pretty awesome party.
Yeah, like, oh yeah. I would look at that flyer and be like, wow, like that happened. I want to do that again, basically. So that was definitely the inspiration. And then we did So Fucking Future combined with Splatterkore, I think both times. And we all just, became buds. Just whatever label, whatever promote, like whatever it took to just like book these acts in a place with a bunch of people. Splatterkore stage would always be the side stage, but it would always be like brighter, more smiley. It's a really dedicated group of people that come out for this sort of like this Speedcore, whether they come from the Netherlands or England or Japan or Belgium or Australia or Palestine. There are people that they keep their eye out, or Finland, like. So on what we are now calling Flashblock, you had Trash and Core, you had our parties, Gabber Noir parties, Splatterkore parties, and then like Press Terror would come through. I mean, that was even, before my time with Planet of Dur, and kind of saw what the Trasholade folk were doing. And copied it or like used that model. And Legion of Speedcore got in there. People just saw, credit goes to Kili as a place. It was just a room, that usually that's how simple it has to be for a good club. It's the right price, the right location, and the system was just fine. And credit goes to Goron and Amos. Like Amos is Professor Chaos, who started Trasholade in 2012. I probably got that wrong. And then, Goran Gorski is just a monolith of a human, and the amount that he carried that series without, looking for kind of credit or recognition. Like I'm here right now on behalf of so many homies and kind of mystical characters that like won't even go on camera. Like Zoe or Goran or Westby, Marco. Like I could name a bunch, and having to navigate the political sphere, which we can talk more about. But it's not as simple as like room, rave, sound, lights, admission. Like the amount of politics and navigating emotions is like any rave, but it was dense. We can talk more about it, but I'll rattle off like Trasholade. You had The Toilet, you had Delif 640, Igoa, Alienate, Xanaxium, MSP, HFK, BWK, Ethereal Arthropod, Lepest, Gridbug, Diagnostic, was once Atomhead Undercover, Base Infected, Sea Mantle. We did Trasholade, which, I got really involved with Trasholade for 23 and 24. And then for Trasholade, which was 2 days, we teamed up with the Panzer Schokolade kids in Vienna, Abraham Villas-Castle and Faz OG and Teresa Haller and the whole gang and Vincent and came up, and we did 2 days with those artists. We'll put the flyer up. Sea Mantle, Christoph Fringeli, Jeff the Chef, Embryoner, Nakaset, Gluten Saxonhammer came, Kree and Zombie Flesh Eater there, of course, Neurocore, Sucrose, Submerged was in town. He played Lethal Ataraxia from Mecha Kucha, Letalium, Inushini, Dr. Contra from Mexico, Oleotronics, who, if you don't know, you gotta know, she's all over the place. Messiah's Cathartic Noise Experience, always generally would come through and help out with events. He was always someone that was head first on assisting, giving a hand. Planet of Dur, Legion of Speedcore, you get more like Hatewire, Junkie Cut, Scat Injector, Ralph Brown. Some of those more like rigid, maybe barbaric stuff, but still fun. And then any other night of the week was Psycore, Psytrance or whatever. Yeah,
that's a lot of people. Many I know personally.
Yeah, and Teknojta. Yeah, it was friends. There was like a theme of artists that you would book them and you weren't sure if they would show up, and then they would just appear from behind the booth, like in a puff of fog. That was a cool move. That's kind of a signature Flashcore's move. Laurent could do that. Mr. Pork could do that. And meanwhile, Laurent, Mr. Flashcore himself, since he has the studio in the building that's the floor that's directly above the clubs, he's standing on the roof like Flashcore Batman, just with his shoulders crossed, and you at any given moment you could walk by and catch him just standing and judging or surveilling the quality or what the hell is going on down there, and then you'd kind of like look back over and he'd disappear.
Yeah, I noticed that Satanoid from here, he always just kind of appears at parties, but he doesn't warn in advance that he's gonna be there. But
yeah, it's kind of this classic magic trick that's like biomorphically like transmuted from Flashcore artist to Flashcore artist. I haven't quite gotten the hang of it. Satanoid at Trasholade was something else. But so yeah, it was just like inevitable for this block to be a thing. You know, shout out to Chris Westby, who stacked those lineups with a vengeance. I mean, he had a point he was trying to make. He was mostly in charge of the lineup stuff, at least for Trasholade. And he was the one who's, you know, I really got in there for Trasholade, and I mean, we're all a part of it, of course. Like it was a community, you know, thing. It was a group thing, but he was the one that kind of set, you know, he would just reach out to everyone, book them all, and then everyone else had to handle it. And it was like, oh, fuck. Okay, how many hours are in a night? Okay, how much money do we have? Okay, how many places do we have to sleep? I got to say, he's quite responsible for that model of these stacked lineups. And we all just kind of chased that for a bit until our heads blew off, you know, after pandemic. It was like, we did one last hurrah. I did something called Just for Kicks. I'll throw the lineup on the screen. It'll be quite familiar by now. And that was like a homage to everything before us. And these days, I guess worth mentioning now, as good as any other time, very peacefully and rightfully, Marco, who was a seminal figure from even way before my time. Marco and his gang of bandits have carried on with un.core.bar, which is like really kind of taken the spirit of Flashblock and just carried it in a really, I mean, he was always like just such a wonderful member of the group to deal with. Always just right there, ready to help, and like never in the way, always helpful. So it just makes sense that he's kind of continued with it. I think he was there before any of us in the first place. We all just like ran up through there with our drama and commotion and intensity, and he was like, nope. And then we left, and he's like, all right, I'll carry on.
Cool. Yeah, so it's like people are passing the torch.
Yeah, I couldn't even say passing the torch because he always had it. So I'm avoiding that verbiage. He continued with it. He picked it back up off the ground.
Yeah, I always look at those lineups and I'm like, wow, how could we ever do something like that here? But it's difficult to get a budget, and also just dozens of Flashcore or Speedcore artists. It's like not gonna attract so many people here. But there is like definitely a small group of people who are really into this kind of stuff here. But for like the bigger crowd, you just kind of have to expose them and maybe do some compromises so that it's not like all the time like very fast and very experimental, but it's more like building from something not like mainstream hardcore, but like, I don't know, 200 ppm maybe or slower, and then go to the crazy stuff at the end. If I had the budget, I would try that kind of crazy lineups here, but I'm not sure like how many people would actually show up.
I don't recommend it. It was its own sport. I mean, there was a point during Trasholade, which was the 2-day event, 73 artists, 3 stages, main floor, mostly 200 BPM plus, second floor, a lot of like 2, third floor as well, that I realized that this might be the most kick drums in a weekend ever at an event. So I was like, okay, we did it. Like, you get it? Okay. I was always, my character within the group was like more like what you're describing. Let's do a night that like builds, and then at the end there's like this explosion of BPM. It was just this like almost sport we were playing. It got to be. It was thin. Like I think I went to the first one that was kind of robust. Like it was plump crowd wise, but the Trasholade before me could be thin and stuff. And there's aspects of that are less shiny and glory, like the labor aspects of it. Like people were not really paid. It turned into this pyramid scheme of booking artists. I mean, it was a free party approach, but how sustainable is that model? And that's something that we all had to eventually look at. So that's one aspect. the other is we had people, we had the dedicated Speedcore heads coming from all over, a lot of East Germany and Netherlands. But, we ran into issues there that was, so they would help fill the venue. But there were some people who came where it was questionable about their politics. And that's how Trasholade started. Trasholade was like, look, Speedcore is not just a barbaric, like, gas mask, biohazard symbols, and hating immigrants thing. Like, not that inherently it is elsewhere at all. And you have like Speedcore Worldwide with Thorsten behind it, who's like a really, like, I don't want to say policing figure, but like he's really like a paternal figure looking out in the scene about racism and about like not cool behavior, fascist behavior, and like bless him because he's really in the middle of it. And there's other figures like that. And Trasholade also was like, look, this music, this trashcore, this shitcore. I mean, there's all kinds of music in Trasholade. I'm focusing it a lot about this high BPM stuff, but there was everything. It's also queer and weird and funky and like many different races and different backgrounds and unicorns and hearts. And so it was rebranding, ethics become aesthetics, as Hannibal says. And we was rebranding a bit what the notion people had about this music. That was done before my time, and I loved that. But we did always have to confront that regularly, which was a constant battle. And just navigating, like, what people's politics are, what people's intentions are, and then we had apolitical people, which is like, and the apolitical thing is like people will be like, I'm not into politics. It's like, as if like it's voting for Biden or Trump, like politics. It's like food. It's like, I'm not into food. It's like, well, you are. Like, you are. You just...
There was this, like, terror head aesthetic that was maybe more common in the, like, 90s, like late 90s and 2000s. But then Splatterkore and all that came in the more like in the 2010s. It was kind of a new vibe and maybe even more inclusive compared to what was before. Although, of course, it was often mentioned in parties like Fuckparade that it's like anti-racist and anti-fascist and so on. But it had a certain kind of aesthetic, I guess. But it transformed a bit, maybe.
Yeah. It was always important not to judge folk because they had shaved head and like terrorcore shirts. They would look very uniform. So and Splatterkore was one of the camps that was like making sure people weren't judged for how they looked, ironically, as also the camp that was like, this music is a lot more diverse than it appears.
My first Fuckparade, I actually already said that, but it was in 2011, but I had already been following it like maybe since I got into hardcore, like around 2003 and 2004. The parties were selling DVDs from different hardcore parties, like there was Mega Rave and Thunderdome and that, like more commercial stuff. And then there were like these DVD-Rs from the Fuckparade, and then that was like before YouTube and all this. So I ordered like the Fuckparade 2004 DVD-R, and I was looking at that and I was like very impressed that I have to go there someday, and it's like a pilgrimage, like that you have to do. Like if you're into speedcore and that kind of stuff, then you have to do it once in your life. So then I finally went there in 2011 and played at Tacheles. Was it a squat or a theater or something like that?
Yeah, it was a squat.
Yeah, and I think doesn't exist anymore. But yeah, I was invited by Splatterkore to play there, so went to the parade, and then then to the after party there. Yeah, it was really intense and really liked it.
Yeah, my first Fuckparade was early on. I think it was like my first few months in Berlin. I barely knew what was going on. I walked down. It actually was on Flashblock, ironically. And it was east of Ostkreuz in what's now a bunch of condos, of course, but it was an empty lot. It was dark out by then, no lights on the trucks. They were parked. It was the end of the parade. And it was just like 6 trucks blasting Gabber and hardcore and stuff and trance or whatever. It was sick. I was just giddy in general still at that time. I was like, this is sick. Everyone I talked to, I was like, this is sick. And I didn't really revisit Fuckparade. I don't know what happened for the next few years, but in 2017, 18, we did a Splatterkore truck. Like I took that head on, like got up at 5 a.m. and got the truck. This guy from Frankfurt, this Psytrance guy, saved us last minute. He had a license, C-class driver's license, and swooped in and drove the truck for 12 hours. We got the generator, and we had a system. Can't remember the guys we rented it from, and did a Splatterkore truck. There was a Trasholade truck as well that I made it out to for a moment. That was fun. So yeah, for Fuckparade 2019, we did a Trasholade truck. Me and the group of us got together. I remember it was quite stressful, a lot of running around, hilarious, like cartoonish, last minute, like you go this way, I'll go that way, and like colliding with each other stuff and getting the generator. And got it all worked out, and we get to the line, and that year they had a noise limitation, and the way they dealt with the noise limitation is they put you were required to have a limiter or a compressor. So we didn't have one, so we got knocked from Fuckparade, and they said you can go to the end of the parade and you can park the truck there and wait. And we did, waited there all day, and then they kind of messed. We did another sound check with the police and the orchestrators, and they kind of messed with us. We were kind of like at the right decibel limit, and then someone like turned up our knob or something on the limiter, like a policeman, kind of like heckling us, and they were like, sorry, canceled again. So we'd done a lot of work and spent a few $100 for nothing, and we also had Laurentium and La Foudre from out of town to play. So we were pretty bummed at that point. We had these wonderful guests. We had Angie at Chaos and her husband Muff in town to play and drive the truck. And, we had guests. We were kind of embarrassed in front of our guests. So Chris and I, Westby, just started heading east. Everyone else they dispersed. Maybe they went to a club or whatever. Chris and I headed east, and we just kept walking and walking until we found this empty driveway by the Deutsche Bahn headquarters, like this big factory. And I remember we had my phone had died and he had 5%. And I was like, dude, call them and tell them to bring the truck and come. And we got a hold of someone finally. And then 20 minutes later, a very, very large truck pulls up, and a bunch of kind of Flashcore immigrants roll out of the back with Foudre and Laurentium, and I think Adele was in there, Nile Fist. And we just pull up in this driveway, and we've got 10,000 watts of Amos' system, and we blasted it into the night. You must have been able to hear it for miles, which is definitely, a super credit to Berlin. The police came at, I don't know when it was light out, 7 a.m. Dell 640 was starting to set up, so we were taking the escalator down so that they could sit on it and play, and the cops pulled up, and we're like, we just set up, because they're a band, they're more of a band setup. They had a little bit of a rig to set up, Zara and Lena. So the cops came at that moment. We were like, they're just They're just getting set up. Like, it would be a pity. And the cops were like, okay, we'll hang for a bit and watch the set. So the cops hung and watched the set for half an hour and then told us to wrap it up. Which, is just such a... People really take it for granted. Mind you, Fuckparade is a demonstration where you are at the cops' protection. The city is protecting you, allowing you to do this. If we were just tribes, if it was like pure anarchy like everyone talks about, and we were just mercenaries with loud trucks, we'd get killed. The strongest people in town would come by and maul us. So I'm not saying to praise the docility of a city or a political structure, but there are politics involved in all of this, and they were yielding to our favor. Especially in Berlin, and they clean up after us. I mean, it's insane.
Yeah, I remember for like you got the cops and then the cleaning trucks in the back.
Yeah, if it was a free for all, forget it. We get killed by the local marauders. They'd pop us in the front of their truck and bash our heads in. Anyway,
I always wanted to do something similar here, but okay, like my city is like there's like this one long main street, but it's not gonna take the whole day to drive from the one end to the other. It will be funny, but yeah.
It's very counterintuitive. It's like take a large sound system, put it on a moving vehicle, and run through public. Like, why would you go through that effort? It just sounds like such a pain in the ass, but we're idiots. We do it. Like, if it wasn't hard enough to throw a party, let's just do it on a moving vehicle.
How many aliases do you have? And also, like, I guess like Death Qualia is the main one. Is there a story behind the name?
Short answer is no. I actually don't like that name. I'm trying to dissolve it. I'm trying to dissolve into all my other entities, and without success. Qualia was a name a friend gave me a long time ago, 20 years ago now, or something, and it stuck. Kind of turned into Death Qualia. And then I needed a name for the first Trasholade. I kind of wanted to change it, so I made it Death Qualia. But the project is so much about life and color and beauty and vivacious things that it's a bit of a misnomer, to say the least. So just one of those names that's been around.
Yeah, like the themes in speedcore music in general, there's a lot of like death imagery, but the music is like full of life, or like it's like the most life and kick drums that you can get, basically.
Yeah, it was from kind of hardcore days, I guess. But yeah, the other projects, it's funny, like Will, Minister of Death, shout out Will, Minister of Death, for those who know him. I think he posted a record that Chris Westby, who's my partner in Death Cascade, gave him. And it's actually not labeled. I'm trying to be all like subtle and nuanced, and it doesn't have an artist name on it. So it's like a DEFCE record. So he posted it and he was like, "Thanks, Chris Westby, for your Death Qualia record." So he managed to like strike through all the, we've kind of made it like a pop quiz. So if you're watching this, you're going to finally get all the answers. I have a project with Chris Westby called Death Cascade. I have a project with my old friend Clem called DEFCE. And so Minister of Death in that moment managed to get the wrong people with the wrong group, and capture all three. Not to his fault at all. I've made it very confusing. And I have a project with Zoe Splatterkore called DEFCE that we performed live before and stuff. And then my new thing that's more like rugged, hardcore, techno, scrappy, brutal, fast techno is called Qlub, which I'm trying to, that'll hopefully all of those will finally officially replace Death Qualia. I just keep stacking them, hoping that I eventually choke out Death Qualia until it doesn't exist anymore. But that said, there's releases coming up and stuff.
Cool.
Yeah, DEFCE with Clem was like literally, this is rewinding back to LA and us kind of playing and making techno and drum and bass together. And every time I would put something on, he would just snicker and turn the BPM up to 200, which we didn't know about like Speedcore or anything yet. So that was really funny. It was kind of prophesized where we were going from there. And every time he turned up the BPM, we were both like, yeah, much better. Oh yeah, this is good. So before we were making whatever, Speedcore, Splatterkore, whatever, we were just making 200 BPM techno. And Death Cascade formed. I mean, me and Chris Westby used to sit alone in that apartment, while Zoe was away for years, just like him in his room, mine in mine, producing and stuff and exchanging, passing each other headphones back and forth and being like, oh shit. So finally we just clued into ourselves, and he'd gotten a DFAM from Amos. It's all very ancestral, all the backstories. Amos started trashing core, had some like 3 DFAMs or something, and Chris came home with one, and we plugged it in. We loved the 8 controls, the velocity control per step really allowed for nice rolling, smooth rhythms, evolving, undulating, ebbing rhythms. We loved that. So I hooked it up with some other patches and sounds, and we jammed one night, recorded 2 hours, and we were like, this is kind of sick. So we stayed working together on stuff ever since then. Yeah, and DEFCE, pretty straightforward. Me and Zoe living together, and she did a lot of DEFCE from jail. That was really impressive. We had a show, the one you played, and she was to be out of jail a couple of weeks before it. So we were preparing with her in and out of jail or over the phone. It's a full hardware setup. So that was pretty special for her to come out of jail, play that set. I think Miro Pagic played later that night from PCP and you, and that was a special event for sure.
Oh, nice.
And I think that's all my alias. I think that's all my, I got some collabs coming up, but.
Cool. Yeah. And the DEFCE wasn't that, that was here also. In, the party we did.
No, Zoe played as Splattergeist there. I remember I played and then she played. And she got a much better response. I mean, Zoe, she's a legend. She knows what she's doing. I remember Sam Satanoid going up to her, and I hadn't heard him speak yet. And he just goes up to her and he's like, that was the perfect set. Perfect. With like a lot of intention. And then he disappeared into the night. And I was like, wow. That was fun. Mako Festival. That was really nice.
It was a very, very hot summer weekend. So people didn't enjoy spending so much time inside. But also we were trying out 2 stages. Like 2 stages where the bigger one was, I guess, a bit more like the kind of stuff you would hear at the Bang Face Festival. And then the smaller one was a bit closer maybe to what you would hear at the Flashblock parties or our own Shaman Core stuff and that more experimental live stuff.
Was that the premiere of Hidden of your group? You say the name, don't make me say it.
Yeah, Hidden Virrenvinguttäjät.
Was that the premiere?
No, I think we started around 2012 maybe, but at that time we were playing with Sami, so it was 3 of us. We've always played together with Staketop, but Sami has been with us for a few years, and he was also there. We are like 2 to 4 people, or it depends who joins in the setup. Okay.
I lay down on like the stage. You guys were playing opposite the stage, and that was awesome. You guys kind of opened the night. I mean, you opened the later part of the night, and that was fantastic. Because there's also like you and I share this appreciation for meditative core music. I think a lot of people think like Speedcore or whatever is aggressive and brutal and like in your face. And I'm not a huge fan of that approach. I actually am into it because it's smooth and almost soothing, kind of like a ballet. And I listened to your mix from last month or so, and I was also like, such a relieving listen. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe you can talk about that more from your perspective.
Yeah, I don't know. I just somehow navigated more into that direction, but I did start out with the more aggressive speedcore when I got into hardcore in general, like 20 years ago. The stuff that I could find, it was more the aggressive stuff with the guitars, and I really used to like Dashcraft, which was like a breakcore speedcore project. It was like aggressive speedcore but very chaotic also. But I don't know, maybe when I discovered Flashcore or around that time I started to get more into that sound, and then like the whole French industrial hardcore also, which can be both brutal but also like very meditative and atmospheric.
Like Laurent Ho, maybe.
Yeah, and now you got all kinds of new artists like.
I think there's Queed stuff and
like my own small label. We had some more new artists like Nandavaka and Fatigue Suspect and some guys like that.
Okay.
Well, they do some speedcore stuff too, but also like something like 220, 240 BPM. So not like super fast, but still like kind of meditative and like kind of like techno in a way, but just faster.
Yeah. It's good BPM, 240, yeah. Underappreciated BPM. It's always like 180 or like 260, but that 220, 240 region is nice. You can bob to it really nice.
I think that people are kind of missing out on that stuff because it's mostly released on Bandcamp and maybe some small batches of vinyl, because I know that there are people who kind of miss that, that techno aesthetic in the stuff that's played at the mainstream hardcore festivals. There's more like this, like big long breakdowns and trailer samples and stuff like that. But,
Xbox kind of music.
Yeah. But,
and now we know the darkness inside you.
But I think that especially that French industrial hardcore and the Flashblock stuff, the Flashcore and the Speedcore that we play, I think it has a lot to offer for the people who like hardcore, but they will like to hear something a bit more maybe like techno sounding or meditative. Yeah.
I agree. I think there's still a gap between a lot of this Flashblock music and music that like you're pushing as well, and a lot of people being into it. It's still extremely fringe, and I think people have yet to realize how flowing and organic and like visceral it is without punching you. I see it continuing to get bigger. Yeah, but I'm surprised it's not as big now as I thought it would be. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in club music that's like blast beats. And there's a lot of fast kicks and blast beats in club music these days and in deconstructed club, but it's a bit more jarring and jagged and intense. But the more dubbier, flowy techno aspects, I think it's a long haul.
If we talk about the industrial French hardcore, it was bigger maybe in the 90s or early 2000s, at least in certain parts of the world. But it would be great to see it get kind of bigger. But of course, I understand that people are afraid that what if it will be too commercial or if it will kind of destroy the vibe.
Sure, yeah. I mean, not even commercial, just a little bit bigger, so you could play a stage in front of a few hundred people, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, even Trasholade, we were pulling everyone from every angle, roping them in so we could have 150 people in a room for it, if that. I mean, and that's the, I think you could spare to be a bit bigger.
Yeah. When I talk with people from Berlin, they are like, no, don't make it a too big thing so that people will travel to Berlin and kind of ruin it like tourists. But in my opinion, I come from a smaller scene, so I think we could benefit a lot if it was bigger in other countries as well, because then also when it gets recognition abroad, then it gets more recognition in our local scene as well.
Amen, brother. I know this. I know the sentiment, and I just don't agree with it. I say blow it out. Like, it's only going to get so big. We're talking about pretty fringe stuff here. So, I'm on board with you. Maybe you can talk about like what's redeeming and what's gratifying about being in a niche, place in Tampere versus being in the Grand Berlin and the scene there.
When I play this kind of music, I think that the crowd at my own parties, they usually receive it quite well. But I also play a lot of other parties of some other organizers here and there, and it's sometimes more difficult to translate this music when like there's a big gap between, like, for example, what the other DJs and artists are playing and then what I'm playing. So people are often they're just sitting and listening or going to the other stage.
I've been there, yeah.
But yeah, at our parties, it's usually there's a nice vibe. But we need to do parties with just one stage. It's usually better if we play Speedcore, so people get exposed to it. And
You're
maybe
forcing it down their gullet.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've definitely been there with the floor clearing, which is not what I'm here for. I had my floor clearing days, like they were fun and all, but it's not. It's always a bummer when you go on and after 40 seconds, like and clear out, and they're like, I know it's coming. They clear out. And you're like,
Yeah, I played like one techno party where they had like 300 people or something, and I started with more of my like slower stuff, maybe like 130 ppm something, but there's like segments of speedcore here and there. But then I went like beyond 200 ppm and then up to speedcore, and then I think in the end there were like from 300 people to something like 10 to 15 people dancing still.
It's not bad, yeah. I mean, I accept that challenge. I think it's important to, what you and I are saying is that we truly believe lots of people who are like into techno or whatever would be into this music. So if we think that, we have to execute it. So I accept that challenge. It's always good at that. It's always good at reeling in a crowd of like ravers. It's a challenge I accept. Is reeling people in, and it makes for more fun sets. I'm a little more interested in that set than just a pure like splitter face set.
So why do you think this music is so concentrated in Europe?
It's hard to say. I think you'd have to just ask why rave music and hardcore rave music is so central to Northern Europe. It splinters off of that. With the Netherlands, I'd love to learn more about why the Netherlands is like it is. It's really its own thing when it comes to hardcore electronic music. Germany as well. I don't know if they've been feeding off of each other. So I think it's safe to say it splinters from that. Hardcore 4/4 beats. It's funny. Like I remember, like when the Bjork album came out, and a lot of people were ripping at her for stealing gabber, like appropriating gabber, which is such a hilarious, like so fundamentally hilarious of a concept that you could steal 4/4 music. I mean, first of all, Bjork was playing hardcore before any of those kids were born. But besides that, that stuff is super innate to us. It's our heartbeat. So to say that hard, fast music like that is inherent to Northern Europe, you know, you have Ghana with like African drum music, and you have similar stuff in Indonesia, and all around the world, percussive music. So I don't know why electronic music. I think that's a documentary or an interview in itself with an expert, but I don't know why this hard and fast electronic music is. Do you?
I don't know. Yeah, I think it just, well, Germany, the Netherlands, France, UK, Belgium, kind of that area, kind of spread from there, and it's just somehow strongly tied to the culture. I think it was kind of discovered before, even before the 90s, when people like really started to do fast electronic music.
I know you're responsible for posting some theories yourself, doing some digging on the 60s.
Yeah.
You know, granted, we have hardcore punk and metal's huge in the US and then like in Eastern Europe and around the entire world. So it's something to blame in the electronic aspect. It seems to be bigger in Europe and the UK and as you go east. Whereas the US is all about bands.
Yeah. Places like Finland are kind of close, but also kind of far away. So for some reason we have metal, as metal is like the mainstream subculture in Finland. Maybe it's hip hop nowadays, but it's like this huge cultural thing. But for electronic music, there are like pockets that are a bit more underground and very Finnish electronic stuff. But it never became something like Gabber in the Netherlands or something like that. But because we are still relatively close, we do get that influence here too. So it's still like not so uncommon also, but it's also not like very big at the same time.
That's kind of interesting because you guys have free parties and you have the scenes that happen in Northern Europe. I'm just excluding you from Northern Europe, or that happen in Europe, but you're as not that as possible.
Of course, we have like underground events like private parties and that stuff since the 90s, but the numbers are just smaller. But yeah, things are getting kind of better because, well, okay, hardstyle has been partly making the scene bigger, and like now there's parties with more than 1,000 people with just hardstyle and hardcore, like the more commercial variants. So there's been some progress, but it's still like not like a local cultural thing, I guess. Those things are more like individuals who are doing some stuff.
Yeah. It's tough to have to sift through a night of hard style to see something you want, like if you're really not there for hard style. Yeah. It's like going to see your friend play a part in a really bad movie, but you just want to see their part. They're in it for like 15 minutes. You got to sit through the whole movie. Like, I mean, the scene in Berlin was, you know, a scene of recluses. I've tended to be like, my community has been fellow recluse, you know, kind of hermit people who don't come out a lot. And Zoe was always really good about that. She really wanted people to get out of the house. A lot of these nerds who sit in their basement producing music and don't get out a lot. You know, she was really adamant about that. And community is really important. It's more important to me now more than ever, probably just because I'm getting older and more mature. Not even, I mean, I guess through experience, but, you know, music shouldn't really exist in a vacuum. You know, a bunch of egos producing stuff alone in their bedrooms so that people they don't really know through a promoter and through a bunch of weird slithery structures and profits can listen to it is, I don't think it's what it's about. You know, I think with AI coming, we can let AI like produce the most complicated, crazy music and then play it to other AI or people who don't care. making good music is important. Having a good sound system is important. A good space and taking care of all the aspects. But the community is, I think, is equally important. I dated someone from Turkey for a while who was really deep in the scene there, and connected more with the scenes in the Middle East in general. Shout out Root Radio and Radio FuPa and Odds, who just passed away. Exist Palestine. Like, these people, Turkey included, sort of especially, like, they're fighting for their lives. This is, every day is a battle for them, and they have to stick together. They can't really be splitting between like Splatterkore and different genres. It's kind of a different conversation altogether, and I think we recognize that. Let it be known we're here today to talk about and romanticize Flashblock. But if we're going to talk about community, I need to shout out the folk. The more east you go, because they have to come together. They have to stick together. People disappear. Things happen. But I mean, one, it's important actually to, if you can, take time and energy out of your life to do what you can to include those folk. If you're a promoter or a booker, there's people who can't play in the West just because of their passport. They don't have the magic passport that we have. And two, learn what you can from those scenes. They're sticking together against a lot of different odds. Yeah, checking in with one another, even if it's a scene of recluses, a bunch of nerds who don't get out a lot. Like, just that comfort of knowing that your fellow nerd is safe and okay, assuming you've spoken to that person recently, or have heard about them. Just knowing that they're alone, home, okay, whittling away at music, is still community. But yeah, with the onset of AI and the downfall of the planet, it's all we have. There's drama too that comes with it, right? Sometimes you wish you weren't involved in a scene.
And yeah, I look at scenes like Berlin or any other countries also kind of like an outsider. So there's so much that I see about that, but I don't necessarily see what's going behind the scenes. So I think that the experiences are always a bit different between different communities and also different countries. But it depends also on the people who come in the group. We've had our own drama sometimes, but
partially why I mentioned, scenes where it's tougher, people are maybe fighting for their lives or doing this for their livelihood, to keep that in mind. And when you're having dramas, I mean, dramas are dramas. People get hurt, people do things. I've been there. Sometimes you're stuck between a wrong answer and a wrong answer. Do our best to persevere, take our time if we really need time to ourselves away from our scenes, like, it's okay. But, when I say community, I also mean the international community and not just the local scene. As it were, I'm back in the US, and community to me means connecting with people across all of North America. So yeah, just the idea of checking in with each other, whether it's locally or internationally, universally, galactically.
Yeah, it's sometimes like difficult online, I guess, because we are communicating mostly with text, I guess. So there is that you're not looking into somebody's eyes, or like we should have maybe more Zoom meetings or something with the Speedcore artists from around the world. And well, it was during the COVID times that I got the idea to start this channel.
Oh, okay.
It was just nice to have more conversations on Zoom and webcam.
Nice.
And we also had parties, webcam parties, a few. So that was fun.
We did a Trasholade online party.
You have, or at least you, especially in your earlier music, had a lot of these kind of sound design elements and kind of like ASMR type of things? Where does that come from?
I mean, it directly ties into what we were just saying. I have a theory that because you get a lot of sound design stuff and a lot of breakcore out of the US, and we are typically, at least historically, maybe less in recent years, but through the early 2000s, we were in silos, just home alone, making music. I remember my homie lent me his pair of Sennheiser, open back Sennheisers, 610 HDs, 595s maybe. And that, like, listening to electronic music on those just changed my life. So I spent my days, into Cabris and Aphex Twin and Amon Tobin and like these sound design bits. And kind of goes same for breakcore, I guess, where you're just trying to make something crazy, that gets you off home alone. And so I think that it's a little bit of the reasoning behind that. Once I arrived in Berlin, and credit once again goes to Zoe, who always would work with me on my kicks. She was like my kick drum mother in that regard. She's like, what is all this extra sound design shit? No one cares. Like, and it kind of ties back into like this idea of, do we want to just be like a bunch of us behind a computer that meet up every few months and play the stuff we made painstakingly in front of the computer? Or do we want to start, especially with AI coming, or do we want to start like just be more connected to hear this part of our body and our chi, our core. So I've kind of come almost full circle because now I still do sound design stuff. It's fun. Also, the technology these days lends to it. It used to be if you were making sound design and music, it's because you got the CPU for it and you spent a lot of time nerding out. These days, you can just pump that stuff out like it's a sine wave. I neglect the label ASMR, but you might be onto something.
This kind of music, it's like so condensed in Berlin, and the people living there, they are so used to it. So do you think that the Berlin people can still kind of get some kicks outside of Berlin?
I mean, my story, which is a typical story, is coming from being tired of going out to a rave that's like 6 people. Literally 6 people, and sifting through the night. Granted, if it's done right, good system and the fog and timing, space, whatever. 8 of you at a party is a classic get together. The best out by the lake or something. But when you consider the efforts of a sound system and the efforts of like maybe booking someone from afar, it doesn't make sense. Yeah, it depends who you ask. I know people have made pilgrimages to France to see the OG French hardcore stuff. Those are much smaller events than Berlin.
That's interesting.
Back in, Berlin really prided itself. We built that. It really was like 12 people in a room for a bit. I mean, we played to the strengths of the city. I'm back in the U.S. now. There's an event here in Philly, classic American, like. Actually, a lot of people come out, but they all go and smoke on the roof. They come, they see the music's too intense. They see the music's not like, I don't know what they're expecting. Techno, I don't know. And I swear, it's like 50, the one before last, there was like 50 people on the roof and no one on the dance floor. And we're like, it's this like math equation. You're like subtracting X from both sides and like, I don't know, like a puzzle, like squeezing. Like, how do we get this? We're so close to getting it what it should be. I have this awesome visual rig, and now we have fog. They need a strobe, if you ask me. So I've personally accepted the challenge now. I remember that I did get almost 10 years of like banging raves, and I mean, I still have lots of outdoor and. I still have a lot of stuff I'd like to go to and play, but I do want to bring back stuff I've learned from there to the smaller scenes.
And actually, a lot of the artists are also like spread throughout the world. It's still quite a relatively small community, but most are probably in Europe. But then there's like artists in. Japan, and did you say earlier like Philippines, and of course in the East Africa. Well, maybe not speedcore so much, but quite hard stuff. And also the sound systems in India, or was it northern part of India or something like that? That's a topic of its own.
Those, yeah, I mean, we've all been dissecting what's going on there because they're playing like blistering laser chord with these sick horns and sound systems. It's like how math was discovered at the same time in two different places, like in South America and Greece. And they're like, oh, shoot, you discovered math too? Like completely separate from each other in a parallel universes. We both arrived at the same place. Yeah, I love that one. I'd love to make it out there.
And of course, have to give a shout out to South America, like Mutant-Core Records and those guys. They of course know what's going on here, but I don't know if they've ever been to Europe though. But yeah, it would be good to see those guys here too someday.
The affinity for like psycore and crazy trance stuff in South America is totally mind-blowing. And I'm sure they would take to some of what we're doing, specifically like you and my kind of favorite aspects. I think they would take to it really well. It's just South America is huge, and I got to get a job. Like I would totally go and just explore that, but it's not going to fit into my current schedule. But yeah, good shout out for sure. Hope to see someone from Brazil or Mexico or South America on here soon.
Yeah, and Argentina also, those Mutant-Core Records guys.
Oh, okay. They're Argentina. Okay.
And yeah, Brazil has the huge psycore, experimental psycore stuff. And some people in the Flashcore as well.
Okay. Yeah, the audience, the video, and the audience in the videos, it's like, oh, shoot, man. Like, I love that. So speaking of the rest of the world, where else? I mean, okay, Japan, Extreme Obscene. That's the only person I know.
There is a few others actually in Japan.
All right, hit me.
I should Google them. I just added someone on Instagram recently. It was quite good stuff actually. Like he had made like one album where there was a few Flashcore tracks.
Yeah, send that to me. I would say it's hard to keep up, but it's not. It's something I do twice a year as I look for every artist in the Flashblock sphere. And, you can do it in a night to find any new ones. Westby's really good at that. I need a lot of crossover stuff, see how people bend it and weave it into other genres. I think it's interesting how Laurent did a good job of keeping it such a slippery community or such a slippery register of music. At the time it was hardcore and there was IDM, but there wasn't anything that had the rawness and the danciness and functionality of hardcore and the sexiness and intelligence and weirdness of IDM. So I think he did a good job of splitting the atom there. And then it remained very, very underground. And he's kind of an elusive character. And it did kind of become lasercore in a way. And that's like a little bit of a misnomer. But the true, it is supposed to be live, actually.
So do you have any upcoming releases or parties or what kind of stuff you are working on now? By the way, we are shooting this on the 22nd of August, so it might have already happened. Yeah, what's coming up?
So if you're watching this, the new Death Cascade will have dropped. It's a CD, a digipack, which I was adamant about. I'm back in the US. Everyone's got cars. They got older cars with CD players. I spend hours driving. Most of y'all remember that, like, unless you were really born in the city, like a city kid, those long drives and like being stuck with that one CD or being stuck with that one mix that you just listen to over and over. So I think we incidentally or inherently designed that release like that. It's the kind of thing I feel like you can listen to over and over. Story mode, genreless, just, Final Fantasy, like, restart your life kind of music. It was a lot of live jams and we just collaged them together. So I'm pretty pumped about that. You can't tell. Like I love that thing. It almost didn't come out. We made it years ago. One day I was like, Chris, can we please release this? And you know, he, of course, same sentiment from him. So I'm glad it's coming out. It's coming out. That'll be out if you're watching this.
Cool.
And otherwise, just working a lot of interesting techno. Or we'll see. You know, with taking my influences and making it more for a rave that everyone will be at. So a bunch of stuff will come out there. For those you know, Ivory Black, we just were chatting recently. And then meanwhile, doing the final touches on a Death Qualia release with Rel from Data Mastering. Now he's independent mastering. Genius artisan of sonic, of all that is frequencies. And a collab that's closer to done with Chrono out of Macedonia, who's just kind of like brother from another mother. Just found each other in space and have so much in common. That's turning into like an album, and pretty pumped about that. Also diverse set of genres. And then back and forth with this dude Seraphim. Yeah, so a bunch of collabs. And I'm more of I'm not like a releases person. I have tons. By the way, if you're watching this, feel free to hit me up. I have tons of live sets I record. I'm happy to share them with you. That's more my forte, but I'm trying to do the releases thing for a little bit before I go back to live. But keep it live, people. You know, screw releases, do live shit.
Are you planning to do any events in the near future?
Playing here in Philly the 16th, and maybe again, actually the next version of that party is DEFCE. So doing Death Cascade's premiere in the US, unfortunately with just me, not with Chris. Chris also Zeromancer, Eigengrau, Oblivion, no one knows that, but I'm throwing him under the bus there. Genius stuff and Abjection. I got a pile of his music that people need to hear. But so premiering Death Cascade in the US, which is exciting. And for the most part, I got to get my life together. So no, I'm trying to just piece together the scene out here, slowly and just humbly.
Cool.
I will one day. Again, I probably won't throw events for a while. I don't think people realize this, but I probably did like 100 events, and I'll always help out when it comes to, they got like North Tech in Canada. Like I'll always come early, help out, stay late, clean up. But I'm not going to be spearheading anything. But I think in a decade, if I could save up some money, I want to throw like a Trasholade, like a Just for Kick, like a Flashblock outdoor festival in the US, like a big reunion.
That would be cool.
Yeah, I think people would actually come. I think with the timing and with the right channels that like I wouldn't lose a ton of money. I would definitely lose money, but I think we could get like a healthy thing going, But I mean, even if it was just the artist, there would still be like 30 or 40 of us. So I mean, the way I see it, but I definitely like want to do that before I die. Flashcore and artists in our scene age well. They look, they stay pretty healthy, live fast, die later. I don't know.
Thanks a lot for this talk. It was nice having you here, and I will definitely do more Flashblock talks on this channel in the future as well.
Yeah. Get the rest of the world in there too. Thanks a lot for having me, Tomas. Really good to see you and chat about this stuff. Really good.
See you next time on Electric Byway.